Bnei Yisrael, and this is film. The mitzvah's film. In this Avelis of Tisha B'Av, we not only eliminate the Baruches, which played such an important part in our life. The Baruches, when the Kohen HaGadol went into Kodesh Kodeshim, it was asking for the Bnei Shloim, Al Yadei Hazua of the Dam HaPor, asking a Kapora for Bnei Yisrael, Bein Habadim, and also on the Baruches, which we eliminate today, and also the tefillin, that we do not put on the tefillin, which is a jewel. It represents a jewel. How can a lady put on the best jewels when on the day when she's in a velas and so forth? There's a medrash who says, Kishlech Mishumayim Eretz, the Feres Yisrael with film. The Feres Yisrael with film. So I would like to speak to you some about film which played a very important part during the most terrible days in my life. And also the life of many of my friends who were at that time prisoners in the camps. There was an incident when our train to Auschwitz suddenly came to a halt, and we finally realized that this is our final stop, our final destination. And command was given to open those sealed wagons, those sealed train cars, cattle cars, and suddenly we hear the clang of the opening and the word of command of Aussteigen was given. Aussteigen means to disembark. Everybody started to disembark, and as the cattle car that I was in started to empty out, my mother motioned to me and says, "Wait, don't rush." Very soon I looked around, and there were 3 people standing in the empty cattle car. There was my father on one corner. My mother, Alea Shalom, she opened up her bundle, and she started taking out articles of clothing, and she called me over, and she started putting on one article of clothing after the other on my person. And I asked her, "Mother, why are you doing this?" And she says, "Because we have to leave everything here." See what's going on outside. We have to leave everything, so maybe, just maybe, what you will be able to wear on your person, you'll be able to save. So that was her kavanah. And as she was doing this, my father was standing in the other corner and holding my pair of film. And suddenly, one of the prisoners who was in charge of the arrival of these transports suddenly came around and looked into the empty cattle car and saw us 3 people still standing there. And he got very upset, and he says, "Weren't you told that you should get off? Eden, why are you still there?" And he got angry, and she says, "No, a minute, just give me another second." And finally says, "You have to get off immediately," and proceeded to look over some of the other empty freight cars but after about 5-6 steps or 5-6 cars, he decided he cannot trust that we listen to his command. So he turned around and came back, and this time, instead of giving us the kocha about getting off, he decided he mounted also the railroad car, and he got up, and he turned to my mother and he says, "That is nicht darfen. He will not needing this. Why are you doing this?" And she said, "A minute, noch a minute." And finally he says, turns to me and looks at me and says, "Ingele, wie alt bist du?" And I say, "Mit 14, I'm 14 years old." And he looks at me and says, "Ingele, you're not 14 finally he looks at me and points the finger at my chest and he says, Ingele, little boy, du fragst mich nicht kein Kasches. Here you do not ask any questions. If I tell you you're 18, then you're 18. Now get up. I started to disembark and my father called back and says, Rolik, take your film and please hold on to the film as long as you can. I took the film and I put him in my bosom and we disembarked. Certainly, not too long later, probably maybe 2-3 hours later after they marched us for a few hours, we finally turned up into a big barrack, a very empty place, like an airplane hangar. And there were tables of prison clothing in that empty, in that barracks. And there were a lot of prisoners standing with clippers, with hair clippers. And the command again was given that we have to undress completely. And as I have undressed, and standing naked and still holding the film in my hands. And I started crying and I said to my father, Reimer Meusel, and I said to the Bundesschule, Reimer Meusel, I cannot hold on to these film anymore. And I put them down. Pretty soon, of course, we got this prison clothing and they marched us into Birkenau and they showed us certain barracks where this would be our home from this moment on. This was, after about a few weeks, they transported us again to a different camp, which is called Mauthausen. This camp, the Mauthausen, where I was issued actually a number, which was 68818, that's the title of my book. And I was told, little boy, from now on, you don't have a name. 68818 is going to be your name. While we were working in Camp Mill, and my job was to be what's called a Spitzenträger. Since we were, the work of the prisoners basically was to drill into the mountain. A certain mountain, fortunately, was made out of stone, was made out of sand and gravel, and the prisoners used these air hammers to constantly proceed further and further into the mountain and build tunnels. There was a conveyor belt going into the tunnels, sometimes maybe for a few kilometers, and the prisoners shoveled the debris that they were came off from those air hammers, were shoveling on the conveyor belt which took it out. And of course, also there were people working to reinforce these tunnels. The tunnels basically were eventually, these Rutzke, what the Nazis had in mind, they're eventually going to establish their industrial factories to build for the war effort, whether it was ball bearings or even derived oil from coal. They were so short on oil already these days in the last days of the war that they suddenly decided that they are going to have a plan to extract oil from coal in these tunnels because they were safe from the Allies who were constantly sending over planes day and night to bomb their industries. So they figured these tunnels are safe, and they were safe because as far as from the air, they could only see forests and a mountain. So there was an incident in this camp that suddenly we hear something happened, some whispering going around. And I'm trying to find out what happened here, and suddenly a friend tells me, while Mr. Estracher, who I knew, was unloading a freight car of cement bags, because a lot of these, we had to use a lot of cement to reinforce these tunnels. While he was unloading these 50-kilo cement bags, suddenly he found a torn yacht between with the seals practically gone, the Parshians were still in this shelyach. Suddenly he found it amongst these cement bags. And then, of course, it was something that everybody was bestoimen. Now we found something like it was a big find for us. But nevertheless, the tremendous sequences were connected with this particular find. How do we get this into the camp itself? Because this was done at work outside of the camp. This presented a great sequence because many times while we went back in the evenings, they brought us back in to our barracks before they let us go into our barracks for the night. They gave us a little portion of what's called soup or could be called some kind of a hot water with a little flavoring in it. They searched us many times, especially many people, unfortunately, in the winter time, in the cold days. They took a cement bag, paper cement bag, and they cut it like for the arms and so forth. They put it on under their shirts to have a little protection from the terrible cold and so forth. And then they found that some of these prisoners were using the cement bags, of course, there was great punishment. So nobody really wanted to know what happened to the shelyach, because they would probably want to know if they find it and want to know who you had any knowledge about it. So nobody really wanted to discuss it. My father was a very wise man, and when he handed me the film, I'm sure that he knew quite well that in reality it would be almost impossible to hold on to the film any longer. But what he meant, and I'm sure I have come to the conclusion many times what he meant is really hold on to the film, not al harosh, but film shibarosh. Hold on to the Messiah that film represents to Am Yisrael and to us. Hold on to this Messiah, and it should always remain with you. In the time of liberation, and of course, there's a lot I can speak to you for a long, long time just about the moment of liberation. And as Rav Schechter mentioned before, I mean, if it wouldn't be for Rav Yekasiel Yehuda Halberstam, the Chreinu Tzadik Lebrucha, the Klosenburger Rebbe, who told us at the time of liberation that we have no choice but we have to really again accept the Torah and the Torah and come back to our Messiah. This is what Philip represents. Nevertheless, at the time of liberation, the U.S. forces in Ebensee, in this camp, with every good intentions, they were going to feed us a concussion of rice and chazer or bacon, which turned out to be a samhamus that all our strong digestive systems could not tolerate. However, there's no doubt the desire to swallow any food was irresistible. I would have gladly, and same with all my friends, they were standing to me. Somebody would have come over at that moment and said, "Srulek, here is a loaf of bread. And you can eat as much as you want, but you'll have to pay a price. We will shoot you or hang you in the next morning." I would gladly make the deal, and everybody else would have gladly made the deal. That was what hunger was, such a terrible pain that constantly was with us every minute of the day. And yet, the Rebbeinu Shloim gave me the foresight to refrain and not to stand in that food line. And I also urged my close friends to act the same way, pointing to another line, which was about maybe 100 or 150 yards away. As I said before, we would gladly have sold our lives bite to eat. But for some reason or other, I couldn't even take the aroma of this concussion. And I was thinking to myself, as I see people swallowing it up and quickly, I see them never fall down. And I said to my friends, it's impossible that the Americans are poisoning us. But there is another line here. Let's see what they're giving over there. You don't have to take part in this. And we walked over to the other line, and as a distance, I approached that line, I could already see my chaverim from my barrack and the other neighboring barracks standing in that line. Who was at the head of this line? None other than Rabbi Yeshua Greenwald, the Choyner Brocher, the Chusterov, holding a carrot and torn shalyat in his hand. And as the line approached, everybody came close and took that shalyat and put it close to his heart and made a brocha, l'honiach filled. When my turn came, I burst out in a hysterical cry, and I said to myself, this is the last thing that I gave up when I was standing naked and I had nothing else. And here in the moment of liberation, I have the schus to take this shalyat and hold it close to my heart to make a brucha with it. As I said before to you, my friends, my father was a very wise man, and of course, he realized that physically I could not hold on to his still. I have to tell you a little story at this moment about a group of hooligans. One started out with about Hatanya and his Hasidim. The Baal Hatanya was wearing his tefillin, and he raised up his head, and he looked at those hooligans, and suddenly they turned on their heels and they started running away. The astonished Hasidim approached the Rav and said, what happened? How is it possible that they looked at you and they ran away? They asked the Rav. Well, replied the Rav, it's just as the Pasuk says, V'yiru kalamai huretz kishem Hashem nikru alechu v'yiru mimek. What is v'yiru mimek? What are they going to see? They're going to see the tefillin or. So the Hasidim were very astonished, and they said, we also wear tefillin. And they start out with us, and they have no problem giving us problem and beating us up. How come they don't run away from us? So the Baratanya says, the Gemara doesn't say tefillin al harosh. The Gemara says tefillin shimmer. If you wear the tefillin, the Masorah of tefillin, and the meaning of the holiness of the kedusha of tefillin, if you have it in your mind and you know about it, then this is what the Amai Hoeres will feel. This is what they're afraid of. When they see that you have that Masorah and you are sticking to it and you are teaching your children about it, then this is what they fear the most. There is a plikte in Masechet Sanhedrin, Tzadik Beis, and the Gemara says there, Ma'ising shehechyu Yecheskel makru. Those are Tzumas Yevashis that Yecheskel brought back to life. Whatever happened to them? Reb Luzer Umad al Raglayim, in the other Umad Raglayim, they say, Reb Luzer says that what happened to these Atzumas Yevashis when they came back to life, Umad Raglayim they got up and they cheated Hashem, Gumesu, and then they died. Umar Abuzer b'Meseira Ragla v'Umar. No, they not that they Doshir v'Mesu, but they all over the Eretz Yisrael, they went up to Eretz Yisrael, the Nasu Lushem, they became, they rebuilt their own families again, and they started new families. This is depicted in Rabbi Loza and Rabbi Sai. Umar Rabbi Loza, Rabbi Sai, Rakla, Umar, Ani Minei B'neihem. I am a descendant of these Yitzubas Yevations that Yecheskel was high. I am a descendant of them. And this is the tefillin, this is the Eidas, this is the evidence that I'm a descendant of these Yitzumas Yevations, because here is the tefillin that I derived from my father, who was one of those Yitzumas Yevations that came to life again. My friends, what is the difference between those two opinions? No one denies that it was a great Nes min Hashemayim that these Yitzumas Yevations came back to life. The difference is, what have they accomplished? What they have accomplished with the second chance that they have received. Were they interested to see how many bowls of rice and meat they can acquire and fill their stomachs and die? Or were they interested in reestablishing and rebuilding lost generations? My friends, I finally came to understand what Rabbi Luzer ben Mesayer wanted to convey to us in this Gemara. When I recall my own history, I too am a remnant of the Yitzumas Yevations that received a second chance. I too would have used a bowl of rice to fill my empty and aching stomach. So why was I standing in line to dawn at Herod Shalyat? Because of tefillin sholiach li Abba. Because of the tefillin that my father handed me and says, I want you to take care, and I want you to remember, be sure and don't give up film. He didn't mean the physical film. He meant the film that he and my mechanchim and all over in the yeshivas and so forth put it in the heads of children. This is what you cannot give up. This is what you have to hold on to. There were many people who were standing liberated in the last moment, and Chalila, they said, let's live or let's die. Chalila, they said that. There's some who said that. And some said, look here, I'm a good Jew, I'm observing the Torah Shema. I am not going to steal, I'm not going to kill, but I don't have to observe the mitzvahs anymore. I don't have to. There were some who said that too. But because the Rebbeinu Shloim sent us a shaliach like the Rosenberger Rebbe that Rav mentioned before, that told us, even we have no choice if we want to exist, and we want to remain Yidden, if we want to be in this world and practice Yiddishkeit, then we have to go back to our Masorah and our education that was given to us by our parents, by our Zaydas and Grandzaydas and our fathers and mothers. Otherwise, Shom Kieh Keburaskan. This will be the end. Majdanek, Auschwitz, Belzenbergen, this will be your last Kura. So we had no choice. And we realized finally, the Shadis HaPlato was standing and realized that we have no choice but to observe and be mekabel, as we say the Torah again, Torah Shebeksav and Torah Shabbat. And there is no doubt in my mind, my friends, that the fact that we have today, Baruch Hashem, moisters of Teure for children, for Ruchelach, Yankelach, Moishelach, that are bursting by the seams. Cain Yirbu, I have no doubt it's because the Sheirus HaPleita was standing there. He was Makabel, again the Teure Kibru, Mekibru, Masha Kibru Kwa. I would like